Buddhism and bioethical issues. Welcome back everyone to Mind Podcast. In just the past 50 years, the fields of biology and medicine have advanced more rapidly than in the previous 50 centuries, both in terms of understanding and the ability to manipulate life. This development has also given rise to new ethical issues, collectively known as bioethics. These issues have become increasingly complex, extending beyond specialized domains and presenting broad challenges to society as a whole. The progress in these fields forces us to confront fundamental questions. What is death if resuscitation techniques can extend life almost indefinitely? What is life if we can reconstruct its fundamental elements? What is the individual if genetic experiments can alter human identity? These were the reflections of the late President F. Mitterrand at the inauguration of the National Consultative Ethics Committee for Life Sciences and Health in France in 1983. This committee comprised philosophers, sociologists, legal experts, parliamentarians, religious representatives, family associations, physicians, and biologists. In subsequent years, national ethics committees were established in other countries such as Denmark, Australia, Sweden, Italy, Canada, and Spain. The task of these committees is to assist governments and parliaments in formulating laws related to new biological and medical issues under the pressure of public opinion and current events. For example, the bioethics law enacted on July 29, 1994 in France addresses respect for the human body, genetic research on humans, organ donation and use, assisted reproduction, and prenatal diagnosis, supplementing previous laws on organ transplants, human experimentation, abortion, and therapeutic termination of pregnancy. In advanced societies, conflicts between ethics and law occur frequently. Faced with the pressures of medical and scientific developments and profound societal changes, it is inevitable that bioethics laws worldwide will continue to evolve. As a Buddhist and a scientist regularly confronted with these issues, I cannot avoid posing several questions, such as 1. What attitudes does Buddhism hold toward bioethical issues? 2. How do these attitudes differ from those of revealed religions? 3. How can we find answers to the complex issues of today's society within a teaching that emerged over 2,500 years ago and only saw significant development within the first 1,000 years? In other words, can Buddhism discuss science when science has only existed for about 400 years? If we rely on scriptures as the foundation of Buddhist teachings, I see two ways to answer this dilemma. A. Either we find the answers in the scriptures, or we do not find them. If we find the answers in the scriptures, there would be no problem. However, everyone knows that no matter how hard we try, we cannot find detailed answers in the scriptures. It would require a lot of imagination to guess, like interpreting Nostradamus or Trang Tring's prophecies, because scriptures, like all human constructs, are bound by history and the limitations of time. If we acknowledge that we cannot find these answers in the scriptures, we must courageously rely on the fundamental teachings and the essence of Buddhism to reason out and create appropriate solutions. This is the spirit of adapting the teachings to modern contexts, making Buddhism relevant to our times. To contribute constructively and effectively, I propose the following working principles. Humility, because each person's contribution is small in a challenging, long-term collective effort that requires extensive consultation and input from people in various fields within the framework of a research committee on Buddhist bioethics, for example. Boldness, with a creative spirit, because we, as lay Buddhists, have the responsibility to study and propose a foundation for Buddhist bioethics. Openness, avoiding dogma, prejudice, and rigid principles. Flexibility, ready to reconsider issues, because in Buddhism as in science, no truth is absolute or eternal. Everything is in constant flux. Practicality, drawing lessons from lived experiences in specific cases, not from mere theory. The general context of bioethics. 1. First, we must distinguish between ethics and morality. Morality originates from the Latin word mores, while ethics comes from the Greek word ethos. Both mean customs, but morality is often seen as outdated and rigid, dependent on social context, whereas ethics involves reasoning and critique and is classified by Aristotle as one of the primary branches of philosophy. Ethics encompasses questions and issues that need to be discussed with the clarity and moderation characteristic of ancient Greek thought. 2. Medical ethics is the ethics of physicians, falling within the broader scope of bioethics. 3. Bioethics is a term first used in 1971 in the United States by V.R. Potter, author of the book Bioethics, Bridge to the Future. G. Hatoy defines bioethics as an ensemble of research, expression, and practice, often interdisciplinary, aimed at clarifying or resolving ethical issues arising from the development and application of scientific techniques in biology and medicine. Thus, bioethics cannot exist in a closed society but only in a pluralistic and open one. While medical ethics focuses on human health, bioethics concerns society and nature, i.e. the biological environment. 4. The relationships between ethics, medical duty, and law also need clarification. Law involves punishment, but there is no punishment in ethics. A physician is both a citizen, subject to the law, a health professional, subject to medical duties, and a person who must make individual decisions. Faced with specific cases not covered by law or medical duty, a physician must take personal responsibility before their conscience. This is the domain of ethics. 5. Morality is often divided into two tendencies: deontological morality, based on certain values, and utilitarian morality, based on daily realities which are common in medicine. The core of universal ethics. The core or essence of universal ethics generally encompasses three fundamental principles. 1. The supremacy of human rights. 2. The value of freedom of choice. 3. The necessity of social integration. The supremacy of human rights is enshrined in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen of 1789 and the French Constitution of 1946. Every person, regardless of race, religion, or ideology, possesses inalienable sacred rights. Since the 1980s, humans have become the central value of bioethics. The standard that can summarize all bioethical considerations is the respect and exaltation of humanity. This value is difficult to define, but a human is not an object, a thing, or a means. A human is something unique and therefore invaluable. Kant made this a principle of his ethics. Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, always at the same time as an end, never merely as a means. That which has a price can be replaced by something of equivalent value, but that which is above all price and therefore admits of no equivalent, that has dignity. According to Hegel, each person should be treated by others as a human being. A complete person with a soul, teeth, bones, spirit and blood, history and sorrow, as a poet once said. According to J. Bernard, the first president of the French National Ethics Committee, a human being is a physiological individual, a being with psychosocial relationships, a subject before the law, but it goes beyond these analyses. It manifests as a value. In short, a human being must be regarded as a supreme value. Regarding life, according to Bioethical, there are two opposing views. One emphasizes the sanctity of life, and the other emphasizes the quality of life. These two views stem from two different moral traditions: the deontological tradition according to Kant, and the utilitarian tradition according to J. Stuart Mill. Bioethics often oscillates between these two ethical stances. To maintain balance, one often has to resort to a compromise morality that blends both and seeks to explain on a case-by-case basis. In English-speaking countries, 4 ethical principles for physicians have become universal values. 1. Respect for autonomy. 2. Non-maleficence. 3. Beneficence. And 4. Justice. The perspective of revealed religions. For revealed religions, particularly Christianity, life is sacred and must be absolutely respected because life is given by God and only God has the right to take it back. Human reproduction follows God's command: be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, the Bible. Therefore, only natural reproduction methods are acceptable. Moreover, aside from changing reproduction methods, humans do not have the right to alter genetics or bodily parts, which are sacred gifts from God. Due to original sin, humans must endure pain and suffering while awaiting salvation by God. Of course, these views, often the official stance of the Roman Catholic Church, are difficult to reconcile with science. However, experience shows that in daily practice, the attitudes of followers and even Christian clergy tend to be more flexible and adaptable. The Buddhist perspective: Buddhism advocates respect for life and non-violence, but does not regard life as an inviolable sacred entity like the revealed religions or as absolutely respected as Jainism. In Buddhism, life and death are part of a vast cycle of birth and death. Death is just a phase, and birth is another phase. Karma in Buddhism refers to conscious actions, not any actions done unintentionally or intentionally, as in Hinduism. Buddhism is fundamentally a path to end suffering, which must be emphasized. Suffering is the main focus of Buddhism, as the Buddha said to his disciples, bhikkhus, whether in the past or now, I only teach about suffering and the cessation of suffering, Majjhima Nikaya. And like the lotus flower that grows out of mud, Buddhism always originates from reality, no matter how ugly that reality might be. Science in Buddhism. It can be said that science and Buddhism meet at several points. Both are based on wisdom, both regard humans as the subject, and both follow a spirit of critique, openness, practicality, and empiricism. Both are merely means to understand the world and oneself. However, while science seeks to understand all that can be known through reason and external phenomena analysis without considering ethics or moral judgments, Buddhism aims at liberation, focusing on the inner self, towards truth, goodness, and beauty, using intuition to achieve an overarching perspective beyond words. In summary, Buddhism and science are neither superior nor inferior to each other, and there is no issue of choosing between the two. They exist on different planes and complement each other. Humans need both science and a path to spiritual guidance. The more science develops, the more it needs to nourish spirituality. Of course, besides Buddhism, there are many other spiritual paths, and open-minded Buddhists will never deny this. Just as there is one moon, but many fingers pointing to the moon. Attitude towards pain. In the case of patients suffering from physical pain, modern medicine has effective pain relievers like morphine and its derivatives. However, in some places, even in advanced countries like France, these are still underused due to various reasons, including religious prejudice. In Western countries, people endure pain as punishment or torment, following the example of Christ, while in Eastern countries, people endure pain as a natural result of fate or a mistaken notion of karma. But recently, the trend against such passive attitudes has become evident, and the French government, for example, has issued notices to hospitals and physicians to use painkillers more widely. Buddhism opposes suffering in all forms, so there is no reason to prevent the use of painkillers. Of course, using strong doses of morphine can make the patient unconscious, thus violating the fifth precept against intoxicants. However, this usually occurs at the end of life, when precepts are no longer the primary concern. Death and euthanasia. The question arises, when a patient with a severe illness reaches the final stage of life, can we help that person die more gently, peacefully, and quickly? Euthanasia, in its origin, means good death and can be defined as an action that causes death or accelerates the process of dying, motivated by compassion for a terminally ill patient, to alleviate their suffering, or more broadly, for another ethical reason, such as severe congenital disabilities in infants. Euthanasia is often divided into two types: active euthanasia, which means intentionally causing death, and passive euthanasia, which means withholding all treatments to allow the patient to die more quickly rather than continuing treatment. This issue is hotly debated in the West, and each euthanasia case stirs public opinion. In most countries, the law prohibits euthanasia, making it an illegal act that can lead to prosecution. The French National Ethics Committee has offered cautious views on this issue, in contrast to the Helping the Dying resolution passed by the European Parliament on April 25, 1991. In some countries, the Netherlands, the United States, the law is generally more lenient towards those who commit euthanasia, usually family members, nurses, or physicians caring for the patient, and the current trend is to impose very light sentences or acquit them. In recent years, the Netherlands has even established relatively simple conditions under which physicians are allowed to perform euthanasia legally. In practice, it must be acknowledged that euthanasia has long been practiced semi-publicly in hospitals. Anyone who has worked in the medical field and treated severe illnesses for a long time knows about the so-called lytic cocktail, has used strong doses of morphine to induce coma, and is familiar with the code NTBR, meaning not to be resuscitated. The law cannot deny these social realities, but it also cannot normalize euthanasia due to the risks of overstepping and abuse. Most revealed religions, such as Christianity, condemn euthanasia because life is considered sacred, and only God has the right to take it away, even from oneself. Buddhism, in my opinion, has a different stance from these religions. As previously mentioned, first, Buddhism views death as merely a phase, a transformation within the broader cycle of birth and death, or conditioned existence. Second, Buddhism respects life and advocates non-killing. However, non-killing is not as absolute as in Jainism, and karma in Buddhism is based on intentional actions, not just any actions as in Hinduism. Bhikkhus, intention is what I call karma. Having intended, one acts by body, speech, or mind. The consequence of killing is to cause suffering to one's own mind, not elsewhere. Killing due to the cause of killing generates fear and hatred right in the present, and generates fear and hatred in the future, making the mind feel suffering and distress. Therefore, we might think that euthanasia, causing a gentle death aimed at reducing the suffering of a terminally ill patient out of compassion, does not contradict the spirit of Buddhism. Upon closer examination, the first case, where 5 monks misunderstood the scriptures and sought to commit suicide, was not euthanasia but a collective suicide attempt. This is no different from recent collective suicides by sects like the Solar Temple, and naturally Buddhism cannot accept that. In the second case, where 6 monks urged a woman to end the life of her terminally ill husband, it is worth reconsidering. Why would 6 monks, whose foundation is compassion and relief from suffering, advocate for that? Perhaps the suffering had reached its peak, and they felt ending his life and suffering was necessary. The third case is even more poignant. An elderly monk suffering from a terminal illness, enduring continuous pain, requested a friend to help him die sooner. We might ask, what is more important? Life is a value, not absolute, since Buddhism sees death as part of the broader cycle of birth and death, or the suffering of a person, which is the most real and fundamental aspect of Buddhism. Could the Buddha condemn someone in extreme suffering and another person acting out of compassion to alleviate that suffering? If we refer to the scriptures, I believe that some Buddhist texts, even those in the Tripitaka, might be suspected of having been edited or added to over time. The orally transmitted teachings were not compiled into the Tripitaka until the Third Buddhist Council, 200 years after the Buddha's passing, and have since been copied many times, making it impossible to avoid some inaccuracies. Lama Anagarika Govinda, who dedicated his life to studying Buddhist scriptures, even exclaimed, 3/4 of Buddhist scriptures are useless. The challenge is discerning which parts are useful and which are not. Perhaps we can only rely on reasoning and self-verification. Buddhist layman Bu Tap suggests that, according to Buddhism, there is a way to avoid euthanasia through ethical practice, creating an open-minded perspective that is not overly attached to worldly matters. With such an attitude, when faced with near-death suffering, each individual can maintain calm and serenity. Saying this is easy, but reality is different. How many can stay calm and serene when death is imminent? How many families do not suffer from prolonged death, watching their loved ones deteriorate day by day, losing their human dignity, all in vain? Not everyone practices their entire life to view death as nothing. Sometimes the quality of the remaining life is more important than life itself. Moreover, we must recognize that euthanasia methods now are vastly different from 2,500 years ago. Back then, euthanasia involved crude and painful methods like knives, clubs, and poison, which were no less painful than natural death. Today, a single injection can bring a gentle death. This does not mean that euthanasia should be treated as a normal practice, and Buddhism advocates euthanasia. Euthanasia should be an exceptional action, reserved for cases where no other option is possible. We cannot outright condemn all acts of euthanasia, nor can we support all acts of euthanasia. We must distinguish between a terminally ill patient in extreme pain requesting someone to help them die quickly, and a nurse deciding to end the lives of patients they deem unworthy of living. Two entirely different scenarios in motivation and intention. In the future, the issue can only be resolved when euthanasia is officially regulated by society, as has been done with abortion, accepted in certain special cases, at the patient's and family's request, with consultation from an ethics committee, consisting of 3 people, for example, in each institution or hospital, to ensure that euthanasia decisions do not become a burden of conscience on an individual. Supporting the dying person and their family with all compassion does not need to be stated. Buddhism has enough compassion to encourage this. Tibetan Buddhism often uses the Bardo Thodol to help the dying and their families go through this stage peacefully and without fear, and the Tibetan Book of the Dead has been widely disseminated worldwide. Organ transplants. In advanced countries, organ transplants have become a routine treatment for several organs: kidneys, corneas, bone marrow, heart, liver, bones, and are being developed for other organs: lungs, pancreas, limbs, nerves. This is a promising field of medicine, but it also raises several issues. 1. Source of organs. Some organs are taken from deceased individuals, corneas, heart, lungs, while others can be taken from both living and deceased donors, kidneys, liver, bone marrow. In countries like the UK and the US, whenever possible, organs are donated by living individuals, often relatives of the patient. In France, the majority of organs are sourced from deceased individuals. Verification is required to ensure the patient, often a young person who died in an accident, is brain dead while maintaining the body's vital functions through life support until a team of doctors and nurses can harvest the organs and inform the family. 2. Family consent. Currently, in France, 30 to 50% of organ donations do not occur due to a lack of family consent. By law, after death, a person's body does not belong to anyone and cannot be treated as merchandise but can be donated anonymously. Due to a long-standing shortage of organs relative to demand, the Cayave Law 1994 stipulates organs may be taken from a deceased person if they did not oppose organ donation before their death. Despite this, organ shortages persist, leading to a recent addition to the law. Anyone who opposes the removal of their organs after death must register their objection on a national list. If one's name is not on this list, it is assumed they consent to organ donation after death. Number 3. Organ trade. In France, the trade of human organs is absolutely prohibited. Blood is always donated, with the donor and recipient remaining anonymous to each other. In some poor countries like India and Brazil, people sacrifice their organs for economic reasons, and blood, liver, kidneys, and corneas are traded like commodities, sometimes even exported to advanced countries. This is regrettable, but not as appalling as instances where organs are harvested from executed prisoners for sale, as reported in China by some sources. 4. Buddhist perspective. Regarding organ transplants, I believe Buddhism has no reason to oppose them. If the purpose is to bring health and happiness to patients and their families, Buddhism will certainly support the donation of organs from both living and deceased individuals. When an organ from a deceased person continues to live in another who gains life through transplantation, what could be more aligned with the spirit of compassion, selflessness, and the principle of dependent origination in Buddhism? And because the spirit of compassionate giving implies no self-interest, we can assert that Buddhism will never advocate the sale of organs, whether the organs are taken from a volunteer for economic reasons or forcibly harvested from prisoners. Contraception. It can be said that one of the greatest dangers facing humanity in the coming decades is the rapid population growth. From 3 billion people in 1960, the global population has doubled, reaching nearly 6 billion today. The growth rate is 100 million people per year, equivalent to the combined populations of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos added each year to the planet. Moreover, this population increase is uneven, mainly occurring in underdeveloped, impoverished regions. It is a vicious cycle and a source of many other issues: disease, illiteracy, social problems, violence, environmental pollution, etc. Therefore, birth control contraception is an immensely important matter that cannot be ignored and is a duty for everyone who is responsible and concerned about the future of humanity, especially when contraceptive methods have become effective and widespread today: condoms, birth control pills, IUDs. Revealed religions such as Christianity oppose contraception because for them, life is a sacred gift from God, as the Bible says, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." In contrast, Buddhism places life within the concepts of impermanence, selflessness, and dependent origination, so it does not regard procreation as an inviolable tenet. Because of this, Buddhism has no reason to oppose contraception. If procreation leads to poverty and disease, which are sources of suffering, Buddhism, as a path to end suffering, naturally advocates for birth control. On this issue, the Dalai Lama's stance is very clear. Not only should birth control be advocated, but this important matter must also be promoted. Abortion. Before discussing this complex issue, we must analyze some scientific and social aspects. 1. Status of the fetus. One of the initial difficulties encountered, and the main reason for conflicting views, is defining when a fetus becomes a human being and must be respected as such. Is it from the moment the sperm meets the egg to become the first cell? When the egg implants in the uterus, the 7th day? When it can no longer split into twins, the 14th day? At the end of organ formation, the 3rd month? At birth? Or sometime after birth? Chinese uses the term embryo for a 1-month-old fetus and fetus for a 3-month-old one. According to the Talmud Jewish, the fetus begins to have a soul 40 days after conception, and according to Islam, it is from 40 to 120 days after conception. To avoid this contentious issue, the French National Ethics Committee has proposed defining a fetus as a being with the potential to become a human or a person to be. According to R. Friedman, who along with J. Testard was the first in France to succeed in IVF, the critical factor is the attitude of the father and especially the mother towards the fetus. A fetus is a human being when there is a parental project. 2. Abortion, a social event. In France, before the law permitting abortion, 1975, there was a law prohibiting it, 1960, and abortion was considered criminal homicide, criminal abortion. Despite this, there were approximately 250,000 abortions annually and 300 deaths due to unsafe, clandestine abortions. In developing countries today, 1 pregnant woman dies every minute, and 1 in 4 dies from unsafe abortion. The Weil Law, enacted on January 17, 1975, allows a woman in distress to request a physician to terminate the pregnancy before the 10th week in a public or private hospital, 1 week after the request. Before this, Article 1 stated, "The law guarantees respect for every human being from the beginning of life." This principle can only be overridden when necessary and under conditions specified by this law. The term used is voluntary interruption of pregnancy, IVG, alongside therapeutic interruption of pregnancy, ITG. Therapeutic abortion can be performed at any time if certified by 2 physicians after examination and discussion that continuing the pregnancy would seriously threaten the mother's health, or if the child would be born with an incurable serious illness. As a result, today in France, almost no one dies from abortion. Moreover, the number of IVGs has not increased in 15 years, nor has it changed since the cost has been covered by health insurance. The 10-week pregnancy limit remains an issue, as some women still travel to the UK or the Netherlands, where abortion is allowed up to 20 and sometimes 24 weeks. In 1982, Professor E. Beaulieu developed RU-486, a drug that counteracts progesterone and induces abortion from the 8th day. Despite some future uncertainties, this drug has proven effective with few complications. In France, RU-486 is only permitted within the framework of the 1975 law. It is likely that future drugs will have earlier effects, and these abortion drugs will replace traditional abortion methods. 3. Buddhism on abortion. Recall that Buddhism advocates non-killing, the first precept, but does not place life as something sacred and inviolable as in revealed religions. Buddhism is fundamentally a path to end suffering. If abortion leads to suffering, even if only due to lifelong regret, Buddhism naturally does not advocate it. But if abortion can alleviate the suffering of a woman who cannot keep the pregnancy safely and hygienically, then abortion is the lesser suffering solution. The ethical issue here is a classic dilemma, requiring a choice between 2 paths, taking the one that causes the least suffering, following a compromised morality based on reality. And the reality is that regardless, there will be many cases of abortion, a social event that cannot be avoided or denied. Clandestine abortion, treated as a crime under unsanitary conditions, leads to many complications and deaths, causing grief to countless families, as experience has shown. Buddhism is a path of compassion and relief from suffering, a practical path that never refuses a less painful method because of rigid principles. Therefore, I believe that unlike revealed religions like Christianity, Buddhism does not oppose voluntary interruption of pregnancy as defined by the Wheel Law. The important thing is to let the pregnant woman choose. It is both her responsibility and her right over her body and her parental project. Of course, the best solution is to prevent conception through contraception, and everyone agrees on that. Abortion is only a last resort, a last-ditch effort. Regarding therapeutic interruption of pregnancy after prenatal diagnosis, I think it is not an issue for Buddhists. If the goal is to save the mother's life or to prevent the family from enduring a severely disabled child with no hope of survival, there is no reason to oppose this therapeutic goal. In cases where it is difficult to decide because the child's condition does not threaten the mother's or its own life, the family should make the decision with the physicians within the framework of the law. Artificial insemination and in vitro fertilization. Artificial insemination, which involves introducing sperm from a donor anonymously into a woman's uterus, has been practiced for a long time and does not raise significant issues, aside from psychological concerns regarding the biological father's identity. With in vitro fertilization with embryo transfer, IVF-ET, biology has taken a further step. Since Louise Brown's birth in 1978 in the UK and Amandine's birth in 1982 in France, thousands of children have been born this way, bringing happiness to many infertile couples. Recently, success rates have increased by injecting sperm directly into the egg. However, issues arise when the womb of a surrogate mother is needed. Should this be considered a woman volunteering to carry a pregnancy to term, or a person renting her womb and being paid for it? For some religions that consider life as a sacred gift from God, artificial insemination, contrary to natural conception, and in vitro fertilization, which is even less natural, are unacceptable. For Buddhism, conception is the result of the meeting of three factors: the father's sperm, the mother's egg, and the rebirth consciousness, Padasandhi Vijnana, that appears at the time of conception. This rebirth consciousness is considered a seed, bija, combined with the power of karma and craving, tanha, especially the craving for existence, bhava tanha, which leads to the beginning of a new life. Apart from the distinctive feature of rebirth consciousness, Buddhism does not differ from science. Buddhism acknowledges various forms of birth for beings, so in principle I believe it does not oppose these two methods. Whether it is inside the mother's body or in a test tube, the main point is the parent's desire to have a child. It can be said that a scientist's attitude, such as R. Friedman, is very close to Buddhism. He believes that the important thing is the parent's intention, which he calls the parental project, projet parental. From his medical experience, what turns a fetus into a human being, moving from potential to actuality, is this parental project. In Buddhism, the key factor is the force of karma, the craving for existence, which is an intentional action or desire. Genetics 1. Prenatal diagnosis. Today, with advances in imaging diagnostics like ultrasound, molecular biology, and genetics, it is possible to detect many congenital diseases before birth. This detection leads to one of two solutions: treatment, where possible, either in the womb or after birth; therapeutic abortion in severe cases. Naturally, some cases are difficult to resolve. At such times, we must rely on basic principles. Respect the parent's wishes. For example, if a severe case like trisomy 21 is diagnosed and the parents wish to keep the pregnancy, their decision must be respected. Conversely, parents cannot decide on an abortion for minor anomalies like a cleft lip, missing toe, or worse, just because of personal preference for a boy or girl. These issues can only be resolved on a case-by-case basis between a medical team and the parents. 2. Eugenics. The term eugenics was first used by F. Galton, Darwin's cousin, in 1883 to designate the science of improving the genetic quality of the human race by studying the factors that can increase or decrease the genetic quality of future generations, both physically and mentally. According to G. Hatois and M. H. Parizeau, authors of Dictionary of Bioethics, it is essential to distinguish between eugenics and eugenism. Eugenics includes techniques to improve the genetic heritage by helping a gene develop or preventing it from doing so. Eugenism encompasses projects aimed at influencing heredity to enhance the human race. Eugenics is a scientific technical discipline, whereas eugenism is a political, social, and ideological stance. According to P. A. Taguieff, we should not excessively equate eugenics with dictatorship, discrimination, and genocide. To have a clear understanding, one must distinguish between eugenics as an idea, eugenic intent, eugenic action, and eugenism as a political ideology or program of action. The Nazi movement's atrocities belong to this latter category. In 1939, Hitler ordered the initiation of a vast eugenic program by exterminating millions of people with gas, starting with unworthy, disabled individuals and eventually all Jews. The desire for eugenics can only be acceptable in preventive measures. In this context, we must differentiate between avoiding the worst, negative minimal eugenics, and the vague aspiration for a better state. For example, genetic counseling, prenatal diagnosis, and therapeutic abortion during the prenatal period all fall within the realm of gene correction and negative eugenic intent. All these actions are personal and not compulsory. They become eugenism when applied on a large scale with the delusion of improving humanity. In the past 2 decades, thanks to the molecular biology revolution, genetic understanding has advanced rapidly, particularly with the global project to study the human genome. This colossal research effort will lead to a deeper understanding of the origins of diseases and, furthermore, to the prevention and treatment of many currently unresolved diseases. Genetic medicine, though in its infancy, already raises complex and challenging bioethical issues. The Bioethics Law of July 29, 1994, only permits genetic testing for medical and research purposes, and the National Consultative Ethics Committee has provided its views and advice on the matter. Thorough explanations to the individual, testing only with the individual's consent, confidentiality of results, and respecting the individual's decision. 3. Genetic engineering. Genetic engineering is the field of research aiming to alter genetics by manipulating genes. The ability to modify genetics has already been applied to plants and animals, selecting and altering corn, tomatoes, horses, cattle. In 1974, a conference on genetic engineering was held in Asilomar, a small city in western USA. For the first time, people felt dizzy with the responsibility, and scientists at the conference decided to impose a 2-year moratorium to allow time for reflection and to establish more stringent safety conditions. Today, many pharmaceutical companies worldwide are pushing forward genetic modifications in plants and animals, creating transgenic species, such as Escherichia coli bacteria that can produce proteins for treating diseases like insulin, tobacco plants that can produce hemoglobin or lipase enzymes, or cows, sheep, and goats producing milk with proteins like alpha-1 antitrypsin, antithrombin 3, or factor 9 for blood clotting. These are significant scientific advancements, but it must be said that all these studies are driven by a clear commercial goal. Recently, the world was shocked by research results from Scotland on cloning, where a sheep was cloned from the nucleus of a mammary cell of a parent sheep, resulting in an identical genome. Subsequently, other animals were cloned similarly, notably the sheep Dolly, whose milk contains a protein for treating human diseases. From a scientific standpoint, this is a promising achievement. However, the potential for human cloning poses significant dangers, leading world leaders like President Chirac and Clinton to call for a global ban on all human cloning experiments. As F. Jacobs said, this is merely a delusion of human immortality, an attempt to replicate oneself to continue existing. Human cloning has no real benefit, as natural occurrences of twins, triplets, etc. are already natural clones. Experience shows that even in true twins, there are differences in physical and personality traits, indicating that genes are not everything. In other words, a human is not just a collection of genes, but a much more complex synthesis influenced by education, society, and more. In terms of evolution, cloning is a step backward, as evolution requires genetic diversity and change through sexual reproduction. 4. Buddhism and genetics. What stance might Buddhism take on genetic issues? During the time of the Buddha, it was vaguely known that life resulted from the meeting of a father's sperm and a mother's egg, along with the rebirth consciousness, transferring parents' traits to offspring. However, the detailed complexities of genetics were unknown, and no one could imagine that one day humans could alter genetics. If the Buddha were alive today, with modern scientific understanding of genetics, how might he react? This is hypothetical, but I conjecture that the Buddha would never oppose medical methods that reduce human suffering. Regarding prenatal diagnosis, he would not oppose prenatal diagnosis and treatment before birth. Regarding eugenics, he would support mild negative eugenics in severe cases, e.g., a child who will not survive or will endure extreme suffering throughout life, causing distress to the family. Conversely, the Buddha would never support positive eugenics, i.e., manipulating genetics with the illusory goal of changing human nature. This contradicts Buddhism's spirit of equality and the belief that only individuals can change themselves, with such change arising from within. Genocidal actions like those of the Nazi movement would never occur in Buddhism, a path founded on compassion and tolerance. Regarding genetic engineering, Buddhism would not oppose genetic modifications if they do not cause harm, are not driven by craving, and aim to treat diseases, alleviate suffering, and bring happiness to humans, and if possible, all beings. Buddhism does not advocate human cloning, knowing that all is impermanent, selfless and conditionally arisen. Experiments on humans and animals. Western medicine's significant advancements in understanding and treatment can be partly attributed to experimental methods introduced in the 19th century by physiologist Claude Bernard. According to him, experimental medicine operates scientifically rather than based on experience. One can only understand the laws and functions of living organisms by dissecting them to explore their internal environment. Instead of the ancient Hippocratic principle, primum non nocere, first, do no harm, he believed one has the right and duty to experiment on a human being whenever it can save lives, cure, or benefit that person. Regarding animal experimentation, Claude Bernard believed that it was humanity's absolute right and duty to experiment on animals before experimenting on humans. The aim was to master life and conquer nature for humanity. The key principle was not to harm others. Scientists only needed to consider the opinions of their peers and listen to their own conscience. It must be acknowledged that this path of experimental medicine has led to the development of biology and medicine up to the present day. The first decree on bioethics was published in 1931 by the German government, setting conditions for scientific experimentation on humans. Prohibiting experiments in all cases without the subject's consent. Avoiding human experimentation whenever animal experiments were possible, providing sufficient documentation on biological methods to explain and determine the experiment's value, prohibiting experiments on individuals under 18 years old and on those near death. Ironically, a few years later, 1939, Germany, under Nazi Hitler's regime, initiated an unprecedented program of genocide and experimentation on prisoners. In 1947, the Nuremberg Military Tribunal condemned these unlawful acts against humanity and established the Nuremberg Code, a 10-point set of guidelines for human experimentation. What stance can Buddhism take on experiments on humans and animals? Human experimentation. Buddhism respects human beings, life, and equality. Therefore, it aligns with conventional views that emphasize respect and protection for humans, and with laws such as the Nuremberg Code. Animal experimentation. Due to the spirit of compassion for all sentient beings, Buddhism cannot endorse the dissection and killing of animals indiscriminately and unhesitatingly, as often occurs in laboratories. From the overarching perspective of Buddhist cosmology, all creatures should be respected, viewed as one, without prioritizing humans over nature. However, in practice, it is challenging for humans not to leverage the advantages granted by nature. To fully respect life, as in Jainism, one would have to abandon experimental medicine on animals, allowing bacteria and parasites to multiply in the body without using antibiotics or disinfectants, making it impossible to treat many infectious diseases and epidemics that have plagued humanity for centuries. Whether we like it or not, humans will continue experimenting on animals and testing new drugs on animals before applying them to humans. This is unavoidable. What Buddhism can advocate is urging researchers to experiment on animals only when necessary, minimally, and strive to avoid causing harm and suffering to animals. Conclusion: as we have seen, Bioethical issues facing society are becoming increasingly diverse and complex. Moreover, they change with the pace of science, so rapidly that even governments and laws struggle to keep up. Bioethics is not something fixed, rooted in traditional moral principles, but rather viewpoints arising from collective, multidisciplinary reflections on the applications of biology and medicine, holding only relative value within a society in a certain period. The issue is how to reach a consensus, a compromise between science, ethics, and law for a harmonious and beneficial societal development. Whether we like it or not, science continues to advance, increasingly influencing daily life. According to Francis Bacon, all that can be achieved will be achieved, suggesting that nothing can halt human progress, regardless of the outcomes or the individuals involved. Revealed religions, due to their rigid principles on life, often take an opposing stance, obstructing certain scientific applications in life and gradually impeding scientific progress. Consequently, their teachings may become sidelined in life, leading to division and confusion among followers. Buddhism differs from these religions, lacking rigid dogmas, absolute principles, and strict prohibitions. Although most bioethical issues were not addressed during the Buddhist time, we can infer from some fundamental Buddhist principles. Buddhism respects life but does not regard it as an absolute value. Buddhism is fundamentally a path to end suffering, with alleviating suffering as its sole purpose. Karma is created by one's intentions, not merely by any action. Unintentional harm does not generate harmful karma. The root of Buddhism lies in suffering. Like a lotus growing from the mud, Buddhism always connects with reality, no matter how unpleasant. With this foundation, we can believe that on most bioethical issues, Buddhism does not oppose scientific advancements and human societal choices up to the present day. Buddhism may advocate for pain relief, organ transplants, birth control, and prenatal diagnosis. Buddhism may accept euthanasia in exceptional cases, genetic engineering, and human experimentation under conditions. Buddhism does not advocate but can tolerate abortion and animal experimentation for the sake of alleviating suffering. These are some personal suggestions that need to be discussed and explored among Buddhists from various fields so that we can collectively build a bioethical foundation in the spirit of Buddhism and in tune with the times. The Buddha reveals the secret to living in peace. Normally, we may become irritated by very trivial matters and blame something or someone. A friend, a secretary, the boss, a neighbor, children, siblings, parents, or the government. We get frustrated when we do not get what we want or lose something we cherish. We carry a kind of irritable mindset, the root of our suffering, that is easily triggered by circumstances or our thoughts. Then we suffer and try to prevent our suffering by attempting to change the entire world. There is an ancient story about a man who wanted to cover the entire world with leather so he could walk on the ground comfortably. He didn't realize how much easier it would be to make a pair of leather shoes to wear. Similarly, instead of trying to control the whole world to find happiness, we should strive to reduce our irritable mindset. However, you must truly work on yourself, not just read or think about it. Even meditation is not very beneficial if you do not follow the complete path, especially the critical elements of developing right view, making strong and wise efforts, and practicing continuous mindfulness. Many people sit on their meditation cushions for hours with minds full of suffering, anger, anxiety, or distraction. Then they say, "I can't meditate, I can't focus." That's because you're still carrying the whole world on your shoulders when you meditate, and you don't want to put it down. I heard that one of my disciples was walking while reading the book Mindfulness in Plain English. He wasn't mindful of where he was and got hit by a car. The Buddha's invitation for us to come and see requires us to apply what we read here. Practice the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, even as you read about it. Don't let suffering darken your mind. Reading this book 100 times won't help you unless you apply what is written here. Surely, this book will be truly useful if you wholeheartedly practice, thoroughly observe your suffering, and willingly do whatever it takes to achieve lasting happiness. The Buddha's discovery, rapid technological advancements, material growth, stress, life and work under the pressure of swift changes. Is this the 21st century? No, it's the 6th century BCE, a time of devastating wars, economic turmoil, and upheaval of established ways of life, much like today. Under conditions similar to ours, the Buddha discovered the path to lasting happiness. His discovery, a method of gradually training the mind to achieve liberation, remains as relevant today as it ever was. However, applying the Buddha's discoveries is not easy. It may take years. The most crucial element at the beginning is a strong will to change your life by adopting new habits and learning to see the world differently. Every step on the Buddha's path to happiness requires practicing mindfulness until it becomes a part of your daily life. Mindfulness is about training yourself to be aware of things as they truly are. With a mind always mindful, you progress through the 8 steps laid out by the Buddha over 2,500 years ago. A gentle, step-by-step training to eradicate suffering. Who wants to undertake such training? The answer is anyone who is weary of life's suffering. My life is fine as it is. I feel happy enough, you might think. Any life has moments of ease and joy. But what about the other moments? The ones you don't want to think about when things are not going well. The disasters, regrets, disappointments, physical pain, boredom, loneliness, remorse, the nagging feeling that there could be something better. These things happen too, don't they? Our fragile happiness depends on things going a certain way. But there is something else, a kind of happiness that does not depend on circumstances. The Buddha showed us the path to this complete happiness. If you are willing to do whatever it takes to find the way out of suffering, and that means facing the roots of greed, hatred, and delusion here and now, then you can achieve your goal. Even if you are just a casual reader, these teachings can be helpful if you are willing to practice what you find meaningful. If you see something that seems true, don't overlook it. Act on it. This is easier said than done, but there is nothing more challenging. When you tell yourself, I need to transform to be happier, not because the Buddha said so, but because your heart recognizes a profound truth, you must give your all to make that transformation. You need a strong determination to overcome bad habits. And the reward is happiness, not just for today, but forever. Let's begin. We will start by examining what happiness is, why it is so elusive, and how to embark on the journey along the Buddha's path to happiness. The meaning of happiness. The desire to be happy is not unfamiliar to us, yet it often eludes us. What does it mean to be happy? We often seek to enjoy sensual pleasures such as good food or entertainment because they bring us happiness. But is there a type of happiness that transcends these fleeting moments of pleasure? Many people try to string together as many pleasurable moments as they can and call that a happy life. Others, recognizing the limitations of ordinary pleasures, seek a more lasting happiness through material comforts and stable family life. However, these sources of happiness also have their limitations. Around the world, many people live in suffering due to hunger. Their basic needs for clothing and shelter are not met. They endure the constant threat of violence. It's understandable that these individuals believe that material comfort will bring them happiness. In America, the unequal distribution of wealth may leave many living in poverty, but severe hunger and deprivation, as seen in other parts of the world, are less common. The standard of living for most Americans is quite high. Thus, people in other countries often think that Americans must be the happiest people on earth. But what would they see if they came to America? They would observe that Americans are always busy, rushing to appointments, constantly talking on mobile phones, frantically shopping for groceries and clothes, working long hours in offices or factories. Why are they in such a frenzied rush? The answer is simple. Although Americans seem to have everything, they still suffer greatly, and they too are puzzled by this. Why, with a stable family life, secure jobs, nice homes, many choices in life, and plenty of money, do they still not feel happy? They think that only the lack of these things causes suffering. On the contrary, having possessions, social recognition, love from friends and family, and comforts should surely bring happiness. So why do Americans, like people everywhere, often feel miserable? It seems that the very things we believe will bring us happiness are in fact the sources of our suffering. Why? Because they are impermanent. Relationships break down, investments fail, people lose their jobs, children grow up and leave home, and the satisfaction derived from material possessions and moments of pleasure is fleeting at best. Impermanence surrounds us, threatening the very things we believe we need for happiness. A paradoxical truth is that the more we have, the more we can suffer. Today, people have more refined demands, it's true, but no matter how many beautiful and expensive material possessions they have, they still want more. Modern culture fuels this insatiable desire. According to television commercials or billboards, what you really need to be happy is that shiny new car, that ultra-fast computer, or a sunny vacation in Hawaii. And these things may indeed bring a temporary thrill, but only briefly. People often mistake the excitement and exhilaration of acquiring something new or experiencing moments of pleasure for happiness. But soon, new desires arise. When the tan fades or the new car gets scratched, they start thinking about the next purchase. Their constant trips to the shopping malls prevent them from discovering the true source of happiness. The source of happiness. The Buddha describes several types of happiness, ranking them from the most mundane to the most exalted. The lower happiness of attachment. The Buddha classified nearly everything that most of us consider happiness into the lowest category. He called it the happiness of sensual pleasures. We might also call it the happiness of pleasant conditions, or the happiness of attachment. This includes all transient worldly happiness derived from indulging in sensual pleasures and satisfying physical and material desires, the happiness of possessing wealth, fashionable clothes, new cars, luxurious homes, the enjoyment of seeing beautiful sights, listening to music, tasting delicious food, and engaging in interesting conversations, the satisfaction of having artistic talents, playing musical instruments, or similar pursuits, and the happiness derived from sharing a warm family life. Let's take a closer look at the happiness of sensual pleasures. Its lowest state is complete immersion in the five senses. At its worst, this immersion can lead to degradation, corruption, and dependence. It is easy to recognize that indulgence in sensual pleasures is not true happiness, as the pleasure quickly fades and may leave one feeling bored or regretful. The Buddha taught that as people mature spiritually, they will understand that there are things in life far more noble than sensual pleasures. He used the image of a weak child bound by delicate strings at 5 points, 2 wrists, 2 ankles, and the neck. Just as these 5 strings, sensual desires, can bind a child but cannot restrain an adult who can easily break free, a mindful person will not become entangled in the desire for sensual indulgence and will be able to live a meaningful and happy life. However, there are worldly pleasures that surpass ordinary sensual indulgences, such as the enjoyment of reading books, watching movies, or other forms of entertainment that uplift the spirit. There are also higher worldly joys, such as helping others, maintaining a happy family, raising children, and earning a living honestly. The Buddha also acknowledged some forms of happiness that are more acceptable. This includes the happiness and contentment you feel when possessing material wealth that you have earned honestly and through hard work. You can enjoy your possessions with a clear conscience, without fear of retribution or harm. Even better is the happiness that comes from enjoying the wealth you have earned honestly while sharing it with others. Another special form of happiness comes from the realization that you owe nothing to anyone. Most of us, even the most conscientious individuals, consider these as the essence of a moral life. So why did the Buddha regard them as the lowest form of happiness? Because they depend on ideal conditions. Although not as fleeting as the momentary pleasures of the senses and less harmful to long-term happiness, they are not sustainable. The more we rely on them, the more we chase after them and try to cling to them, the more we suffer. Our efforts create a frustrated, unhappy mindset and ultimately prove futile. We cannot escape the changing circumstances. No matter what we do, we get hurt. There are higher, more enduring sources of happiness, the source of noble happiness. One of these sources of happiness is the happiness of renunciation, a form of spiritual happiness that arises from pursuing something beyond worldly pleasures. A familiar example is the joy that comes from relinquishing all worldly concerns and leading a solitary life in serene places to pursue spiritual development. Happiness derived from prayer, religious rituals, and the cultivation of faith in religion also belongs to this category. A generous heart is a powerful form of renunciation. Sharing what we have generously and engaging in various forms of renunciation brings us happiness. Every time we let go, we feel light and at ease. From this, we can infer that if we can completely let go of attachment to anything in the world, this broad renunciation will bring much more happiness than occasional acts of renunciation. Higher than the renunciation of material possessions is the happiness of letting go of mental afflictions. This type of happiness naturally arises when we train our minds to quickly let go of anger, desire, attachment, envy, pride, doubt, and other mental disturbances whenever they arise. Extinguishing them as soon as they arise helps the mind remain untroubled, filled with joy and clear. However, there is no guarantee that these impurities will not reappear and disturb our minds. Even better are the subtle joys and happiness found in deep meditative states. In these states, sorrow cannot arise. Although these meditative states can be transcendent and powerful, they still have a major drawback. Eventually, the meditator must emerge from meditation. Since all things are impermanent, even deep meditative states must come to an end. The highest source of happiness is the bliss achieved through various stages of enlightenment. At each stage, the burdens of life are lightened, and we experience greater liberation and happiness. The final stage of enlightenment, complete freedom from all negative mental states, brings us an unparalleled, uninterrupted source of happiness. The Buddha advises us to let go of attachments to lower forms of happiness and to focus all our efforts on seeking the highest happiness, which is enlightenment. However, the Buddha also encourages beings to cultivate their happiness to the highest degree at whatever level of enlightenment they can achieve. For those who see nothing beyond the happiness based on sensual pleasures, he offers sincere advice to steer clear of worldly defilements and to seek the optimal form of worldly happiness, such as by cultivating virtues that lead to material success or a harmonious family life. For those with higher aspirations who wish to be reborn in pure realms, he shows the way to achieve that goal. For those who aim for the ultimate goal of complete enlightenment, he teaches how to attain it. Regardless of the type of happiness pursued, we must practice according to the path of the Noble Eightfold Path. The trap of suffering. The Buddha understood that the relentless pursuit of worldly pleasures binds us to an endless cycle of cause and effect, of love and hate. Each thought, word, or action is a cause that leads to an effect, and that effect becomes another cause. To show us how this cycle of suffering operates, the Buddha explained, due to feeling, craving arises. Due to craving, seeking arises. Due to seeking, gain arises. Due to gain, decision arises. Due to decision, desire arises. Due to desire, attachment arises. Due to attachment, possessiveness arises. Due to possessiveness, stinginess arises. Due to stinginess, guarding arises. And because of guarding, numerous evil and unwholesome states arise, such as quarreling, disputing and fighting, abusive speech, and falsehood. Each of us experiences stages of this cyclical process in our daily lives. For example, while in a supermarket, you see a delicious-looking cake with a red filling and white frosting. It is the last cake left. Just moments ago, your mind was calm and at peace, but upon seeing the cake, which the Buddha called contact between the senses and their objects, thoughts and feelings of pleasure arise in your mind. Then desire arises from this pleasant feeling. Strawberry cake, you think, with whipped cream on top. Your mind begins to chase after and elaborate on these pleasurable thoughts. Strawberry cake is delicious. How fragrant it must be. The whipped cream must melt in your mouth so wonderfully. A decision follows. I want that cake. Then attachment, craving arises. That cake is mine. You may recognize a moment of unease as your mind hesitates, considering the negative consequences the cake might have on your wallet or your waistline. Suddenly, you notice someone else has also stopped at the bakery section and is eyeing the cake. Your cake! Driven by a sense of possessiveness, you grab the cake and head to the checkout while the other customer glares at you in protest. A further scenario, though unlikely, is that the other customer chases you to the parking lot, trying to snatch the cake back. Imagine the unwholesome behaviors that could ensue, possibly cursing or even fighting. But even without direct confrontation, your action causes the other person to develop an unwholesome mind and view you as greedy, Thus, your inner peace has been destroyed. Once craving arises in the mind, selfish and possessive actions inevitably follow. In pursuing even a small pleasure, like a piece of strawberry cake, we might act harshly and nearly create an enemy. When the craving is for something more significant, like someone's wealth, property, or engaging in immoral behavior, the consequences are more harmful, the violence more severe, and the resulting suffering can be unending. If we can reverse the cycle, starting from our negative actions and tracing back step by step to the mental and physical causes, we can eliminate suffering at its root. When desire and attachment are eradicated, completely uprooted, happiness is assured. We might not yet know how to achieve this, but recognizing what needs to be done is the beginning of our journey. Gradual practice. Now you can understand why we say that true happiness only comes when craving is eradicated. Even if you think that achieving the highest happiness is unrealistic, reducing craving can still bring many benefits. The more you can let go of craving, the easier it is to feel happiness. But how can you reduce craving? The mere thought of reducing craving, let alone eradicating it, might be discouraging. If you know that trying to push away desire through willpower alone is futile, you are very right. The Buddha offered a better solution: gradual practice following the Noble Eightfold Path. The step-by-step approach on the Buddha's path affects every aspect of life. This process can start at any time and place. You can begin from where you are and progress step by step. Each positive change in behavior or understanding builds on the previous steps. Among those who heard the Buddha's teachings, some had minds so receptive that they could attain complete happiness right after hearing the Buddha's step-by-step guidance for the first time. A few were so ready that merely hearing the profound teachings, the Four Noble Truths, led to their immediate liberation. However, most of the Buddha's disciples had to diligently practice the teachings, mastering each step before moving on to the next. Many took years to overcome obstacles in their understanding before they could progress to a higher level of insight. Most of us must exert significant effort to disentangle ourselves from self-harming behaviors and attitudes formed over many years. We must patiently and encouragingly follow the Buddha's gradual path of practice. Not everyone can grasp everything immediately. We all carry different past experiences and levels of dedication when it comes to spiritual development. The Buddha was a masterful teacher. He knew we need a clear understanding of the basics before grasping more advanced teachings. The Noble Eightfold Path to Happiness, as taught by the Buddha, consists of 3 progressive stages: morality, concentration, and wisdom. The first stage, morality, involves accepting certain basic values and living according to them. The Buddha understood that correct thinking, speaking, and acting according to moral principles are fundamental steps before advancing to higher spiritual development. But of course, we need some wisdom to know what ethics are. Therefore, the Buddha begins by helping us cultivate the basic level of right view, the first step, and right intention, the second step. These mental abilities help us distinguish between ethical and unethical thoughts and actions, between wholesome actions and those that harm ourselves and others. With the development of right view, we can begin to apply our newfound understanding by practicing right speech, the third step, right action, the fourth step, and right livelihood, the fifth step. Practicing these virtuous actions opens the mind, freeing it from obstacles, bringing joy and confidence. When the obstacles from negative actions begin to fade, concentration can develop. Concentration consists of 3 stages. The first is right effort, the 6th step, which helps the mind focus on each step of the path. Such efforts are particularly necessary when many unwholesome thoughts arise during meditation. Next is right mindfulness, the 7th step. Cultivating mindfulness requires complete attention at every moment, allowing us to control the mind's fluctuations. Right concentration, the 8th step, enables us to sustain uninterrupted attention on an object or thought. Because it is a positive state of mind, free from anger or attachment, concentration provides the mental strength needed to perceive our true situation deeply. With morality as the foundation, concentration develops. Through concentration, the 3rd stage on the Buddha's path, wisdom, grows. This brings us back to the first 2 steps, right view and right intention. we begin to experience wisdom blossoming in our actions. We recognize how we have created our own suffering. We see how our thoughts, words, and actions can harm ourselves and others. We confront our delusions and face life as it truly is. Wisdom illuminates the path out of the cycle of suffering. Although I have described the Buddha's path as a sequence of continuous stages, it actually operates in a cycle. Morality, concentration, and wisdom support and enhance each other. Each step on the Noble Eightfold Path also strengthens and develops the other steps. As you begin to practice the entire process, each step unfolds sequentially, and each virtuous action or insight propels you to the next step. On this path, you will undergo many transformations, particularly the tendency to blame others for your unhappiness. At each turn, you become more willing to take responsibility for your intentional thoughts, words, and actions. For example, as you apply your growing wisdom to understand ethical actions, you will more deeply appreciate the value of ethical thoughts and actions, leading to quicker changes in your behavior. Similarly, as you better see which mental states are helpful and which you need to let go of, you will apply your effort more effectively, resulting in deeper concentration and greater insight. Supporting your practice. As you begin to follow the Buddha's path, it is natural to want to change your lifestyle and behavior to support your practice. Here are some adjustments that can be very beneficial as you progress on the path. They will help you overcome the obstacles in your practice that you will need to address in the following chapters. Don't be discouraged. Some of these suggestions may present significant challenges that take a long time to overcome. Simplifying your life. It's best to begin by honestly evaluating your daily activities. Consider how you spend your time. Develop the habit of regularly asking yourself, is this task or activity truly necessary, or is it just a way to keep busy? If you can reduce or eliminate some activities, you will gain tranquility and peace, which are essential for progressing on the path of practice. You may currently have many responsibilities towards your family or others who depend on you. That is commendable, but be careful not to sacrifice opportunities for inner peace and the development of insight. Helping others is important, but as the Buddha clearly taught, prioritizing your own development is even more crucial. Cultivate the habit of setting aside some quiet time for yourself each day, rather than constantly being in the company of others. If all your time is spent with others, you are likely to get entangled in activities and trivial conversations. This makes it difficult to maintain mindful meditation practice. Regardless of your environment, if you wish to deepen your understanding and wisdom, you must occasionally pause your duties to spend time alone. Of course, external tranquility is not always sufficient. Even when alone in a quiet place, we may find ourselves overwhelmed by anger, jealousy, fear, anxiety, tension, craving, and doubt. Conversely, there are times when our minds are completely at peace, even in noisy, chaotic surroundings. The Buddha explained this paradox as follows. He taught that if we have little attachment or craving, we can live peacefully even in a crowd. We can let go of notions of possession or ownership. We cling to people we love, possessions, jobs, relationships, views, and opinions. By reducing this clinging, we move closer to inner freedom, which is the essence of tranquility. True peace resides in our minds. According to the Buddha, a person whose mind is free from the bonds of attachment and possession is one who lives alone. Conversely, a person whose mind is filled with desire, anger, and ignorance lives with company, even when they are physically alone. Therefore, the best support for our practice is a mind that has been trained. Some believe that traditional rituals help purify their minds and remind them of what is truly important. You and your family might pray together, burn incense, light candles, or offer flowers to a Buddha statue each day. While these simple, respectful rituals won't bring you enlightenment, they can serve as useful tools to prepare the mind for daily mindfulness practice. Cultivating self-discipline. A disciplined life can be a source of happiness. Take a close look at your surroundings. If your bedroom is cluttered with dirty clothes, your desk is piled with books, papers, computer disks, and old newspapers, and last week's dishes are still in the kitchen, how can your mind be organized? Practice begins from the outside in. Clean up your living space first, then turn inward to clear the dust of greed, anger, and ignorance. Maintaining a healthy body also benefits your practice. Yoga or other forms of exercise contribute to a healthy mind. Make it a habit to walk at least once a day. Walking is both good exercise and an opportunity to practice mindfulness alone in silence. A balanced and moderate diet also supports spiritual practice. Eating a substantial breakfast, a moderate lunch, and a light dinner will make you feel better the next morning. There is an old saying, eat breakfast like an emperor, share lunch with friends, and give dinner to your enemy. However, I must add that you should do nothing to harm your enemy. Fast food, alcohol, coffee, and other stimulants make it difficult to concentrate. Eat to live, don't live to eat. Don't turn eating into a habit of mindlessness. Many practitioners who occasionally skip meals quickly realize that what they thought was hunger is often just habit. Finally, train yourself to meditate daily. Meditating every morning, right after you wake up, or every evening before you go to bed, will help you make progress. If you find it difficult to maintain a regular meditation practice, ask yourself why. You may still doubt the importance of meditation or fear that it won't help solve your problems. Examine your fears and doubts thoroughly. Read the life stories of the Buddha and those who have meditated to attain lasting happiness. Remember, only you can change your life for the better, and meditation has proven effective for countless people. Then, practice a bit of self-discipline, especially in the beginning, to maintain the routine of daily meditation. Cultivating wholesome mind states, such as generosity, patience, faith, and other virtues, is the starting point in awakening spiritually. Generosity is taught by all religious traditions, but it is a state of mind that all beings inherently possess since time immemorial. Even animals share food with each other. When you know how to share, you feel joy, and you take great delight whenever you recall the happiness of the receiver. Additionally, it is important to develop patience. Being patient does not mean allowing others to abuse you freely. It means staying calm so you can express yourself effectively at the right time, in the right place, with the right words, and in the right manner. If you hastily blurt out something, you may regret what you have said or end up hurting others. Patience also means trying to understand others to the best of your ability. Misunderstandings, wrong assumptions, and doubts cause harm and dissatisfaction. Remember that others have as many problems as you do, possibly even more. Good people in unfortunate situations may say or do things without mindfulness. If you can remain calm despite being provoked, you can avoid frustration and develop a deeper empathy for others' circumstances. Strive not to blame others for your unhappiness or hope that others will bring you happiness. Look inward, discover why you are suffering, and find ways to overcome it. Unhappy people often cause others to suffer. But if you are surrounded by unhappy people, you can still maintain a peaceful mind by keeping your thoughts as pure as possible, and your patience and understanding might even make them happier. Finally, have faith in your ability to find lasting happiness. This includes having faith in the teachings of your religion, in yourself, in your work, in your friends, and in the future. Faith fosters an optimistic outlook on life. You can develop faith by observing your own experiences. You already have confidence in many of your abilities. Trust in the capabilities you have yet to realize. Finding a teacher and learning the teachings. A reputable meditation center and a meditation teacher who genuinely wants to help you are vital supports. You do not need a teacher who demands obedience or promises divine powers. Seek someone more knowledgeable than yourself, whose life is an example for you, and with whom you can develop a lasting, positive relationship. Following the Buddha's path may take many years, in some cases several lifetimes. Choose your guide wisely. The Buddha described an ideal teacher as a good friend. Such a person speaks gently, compassionately, genuinely cares for and respects you. A good friend never asks you to do anything wrong, always encourages you to do what is right, and is ready to help when needed. A good friend is learned and knowledgeable, willing to share their understanding with you without hesitation. Observe a potential teacher carefully. Actions speak louder than words. Regular contact with someone who has been following the Buddha's path for at least 10 years is a good way to assess the effectiveness of their teachings. Just like a craftsman passing down skills to an apprentice, not only the technical aspects of the craft, but also the virtues needed to practice it. A good teacher guides you in your practice and helps you make necessary lifestyle changes to support your practice. If you genuinely seek happiness, be patient and diligent in studying with such a teacher. Then follow the step-by-step practice method described by the Buddha. The foundation of this step-by-step practice involves learning how to calm the mind, observing your thoughts and actions, and transforming them into tools for meditation and mindfulness. This process takes time and cannot be rushed. One reason many people give up meditation is that they do not take the time to build a solid foundation for effective practice. Finally, take the time to read and discuss the Buddha's teachings. There are many books available, as well as discussion groups and Dharma classes. You can also exchange ideas about the Buddha's teachings online or via email. Reading and discussing the Buddha's teachings is never a waste of time. These conditions for progress may seem mundane, but very few of us know how to live quietly, eat moderately, exercise regularly, and live simply. Even fewer people seek out a competent teacher, regularly engage with the Buddha's teachings, and meditate daily. While living simply and knowing contentment are emphasized here, it does not mean you cannot begin following the Buddha's path right now, regardless of your lifestyle. These suggestions merely highlight what you need to cultivate over the years, or sometimes lifetimes, to progress towards the highest happiness. The beginning of mindfulness practice. The lifestyle changes discussed in the previous pages serve one purpose: to help you integrate mindfulness into your life. Mindfulness is the sole method for cultivating awareness in each moment of the true nature of all phenomena, through contact with the body and mind. You may know it as Vipassana meditation. It is a skill you need to develop and utilize throughout all stages on the Buddha's path to happiness. Here are some tips to begin your Vipassana meditation practice. Sitting meditation. The best time to meditate is early in the morning before starting your daily activities. A quiet place is ideal, but since silence is rare in this world, you only need a suitable place for meditation and a comfortable cushion. Next, choose a meditation posture. The best but most difficult is the full lotus position. Cross both legs, placing your right foot on your left thigh and vice versa with the soles facing upward. Stack your hands in your lap, right over left, below the navel and resting on your thighs to support your upper body. Keep your spine straight, vertebrae stacked like coins, with your chin slightly raised. If the full lotus is too challenging, opt for the half lotus. Place your right foot over your left thigh, or vice versa, with knees touching the floor. Lean forward slightly and push your knees back. If your knees don't touch the floor, place one shin over the bend of the opposite knee. You can also sit with one leg in front of the other, or on a small meditation stool, like those commonly found in meditation halls. If all these positions are difficult, you can sit on a regular chair. After choosing your position, sit up straight to allow your chest to expand easily as you breathe. Your posture should be natural and relaxed, not stiff. Select your posture carefully, as it's crucial not to change it until the end of your meditation session. Why is this important? Suppose you change your position because it's uncomfortable. Soon the new position also becomes uncomfortable, leading you to shift again and again throughout the session, instead of striving for a deeper level of concentration. Practice self-restraint and maintain your initial posture. Decide from the start how long you will meditate. If you've never meditated before, start with about 20 minutes. As you continue practicing, gradually increase the duration. This depends on how much time you have and how long you can sit without discomfort. When sitting, it's best to close your eyes. This helps you concentrate more easily. The mind before meditation is like a glass of muddy water. If you keep the glass still, the mud settles and the water becomes clear. Similarly, if you stay still, keep your body motionless, and focus on your meditation object, your mind will settle and you'll begin to experience the joy of meditation. Dealing with pain. Suppose you have followed the instructions about postures and are now sitting in meditation in the most comfortable position. But soon, you will realize that the comfort has disappeared. Then pain sets in, and you lose your initial determination, patience, and enthusiasm to meditate. This can be discouraging, But rest assured that the discomfort is largely due to a lack of practice. It will lessen over time, and you will find that you can endure it more easily. So let the discomfort become a sign to reignite your determination to practice. If the pain arises from a physical condition like a slipped disc or an old injury, you should change your sitting position, perhaps move to a chair. However, if you feel pain in a normally healthy part of your body, I suggest the following approach. The most effective yet difficult way to deal with pain is to observe it. Immerse yourself in the pain, be present with it. Feel it without thinking of it as my pain, my knee, my neck. Just observe the pain closely to see what happens to it. Initially, the pain may intensify, causing fear. For example, your knee may hurt so much that you fear your leg will become gangrenous and need to be amputated, making you wonder how you could live with just one leg. Don't be afraid. I have never seen anyone lose a leg because of meditation. When the pain you are observing reaches its peak, if you can endure it a bit longer, say 5 more minutes, you will find that the excruciating, potentially life-threatening pain starts to fade. The painful sensation will turn neutral, and you will discover that even pain is impermanent. You can use a similar method for psychological pain, such as guilt or a horrifying memory. Don't try to push the pain away. Embrace it. Be present with it, even with the terrifying scenes replaying in your mind. Don't get carried away by fantasies. Just continue to observe the mental pain, to see it gradually break apart, just like physical pain. When the breakthrough happens, the pain vanishes, and you may feel a great sense of relief, peace, and relaxation. Of course, physical pain or painful memories might reappear, but once you've broken through that physical or psychological pain, it will never return with the same intensity. And next time you meditate, you will be able to sit longer before the pain arises. The second method to deal with pain is to compare it with the pains you have experienced in your life. The current pain, although it seems enormous right now, is just a small part of the pains you have endured, and you have survived worse. Also, remember the subtle suffering that constantly haunts you day and night. Compared to those pains, the small pain in your leg is nothing. It is worth enduring because it will help you overcome greater pains in life. This pain is like a small thorn in your hand. Removing the thorn hurts more, but you must endure it to avoid greater pain later. Similarly, you can endure the meditation pain to help you escape greater afflictions in the future. Another method is to think about the pain others are enduring. Many people are currently suffering from physical or mental pains due to illness, hunger, exposure, separation from loved ones, and other serious problems. Remind yourself that compared to those sufferings, your pain is not so bad. The fourth method is to ignore the pain. Deliberately focus on your breath. To help you stay with your breath, you can take a few quick breaths. My final suggestion when all else fails is to move mindfully. Slowly move your muscles to see if the pain lessens with the slightest change in position. If you have back pain, remember that leaning forward will strain your back. If you feel tension in your back, first use your mind to observe your posture, relax, and then gently straighten your back. Pain in the knees or ankles requires special care, as you don't want to harm the ligaments. If you think the pain is due to the ligaments, first try mindfully stretching the muscles above and below the joint without moving or changing your sitting position. If that doesn't help, gently move your leg just enough to relieve the tension on the ligaments. You may wonder why endure such pain. I meditate to eliminate suffering. Why should I endure more suffering while meditating? Remember, this is a type of suffering that can lead to the eradication of all other sufferings. When you mindfully observe the pain as it arises and then subsides and feel the pleasure that follows its disappearance, you gain confidence in your ability to endure pain. More importantly, because this pain experience is voluntary and intentional, it is an effective method of self-discipline. You will be able to endure greater pains in life. Be patient. Maybe you have never meditated before, or you only practice occasionally. Perhaps you are used to sitting in chairs or sofas. Naturally, you will feel pain when you first meditate on the floor. Have you ever climbed a mountain or ridden a horse? Do you remember how your body felt the first time and how sore you were the next day? However, If you climb mountains or ride horses every day, you soon become proficient and no longer feel pain. Meditation is the same. You just need to practice regularly every day and stick to your sitting position. Pay attention. A good way to calm the mind is to focus on your breath. The breath is always present. You don't need to struggle to find it because it is always moving in and out at the nose. The breath is also not dependent on emotions, thoughts, or any choices. Paying attention to the breath is an effective way to cultivate a neutral state of mind. You should begin each meditation session with loving kindness, metta. Some people can easily generate loving kindness for all beings. However, usually, you need a method to do this. Start with yourself and then gradually expand your loving kindness to include all beings. I recommend reciting the following prayer, silently in your mind or aloud. May I be healthy, happy, and peaceful. May I be free from obstacles, harm, and difficulties, always successful. May I have the patience, courage, understanding, and determination to overcome and manage the inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. Then, repeat the prayer, replacing I with other terms, starting with your parents. May my parents be healthy, happy, and peaceful. May they be free from harm, and so on. Next, repeat the passage for your teachers. May my teachers be healthy. Then for your relatives and friends. For neutral people, those you neither love nor hate. For your enemies, and finally, for all beings. This simple practice will help you concentrate during meditation and also help you overcome any anger that might arise while you are meditating. Next, take 3 deep breaths. As you inhale and exhale, note the rising and falling sensations in the abdomen, upper, lower, and chest. Inhale deeply to inflate all 3 areas of the body. Then breathe normally, letting the breath flow naturally, gently, without effort, focusing on the sensation at the nose as the breath goes in and out. Most people find it easier to note the breath at the nose. However, some prefer to focus on the sensation as the breath exits on the lips, inside the nose, or in the nasal cavity, depending on the structure of their face. Once you have chosen a place to focus on, just note the sensation of the breath, in and out, at that point. When focusing on the breath, you will notice the beginning, middle, and end of each inhalation and each exhalation. You don't need to exert much effort to recognize these 3 stages of the breath. When an inhalation is complete and before the exhalation begins, there is a brief pause. Note it and note the start of the exhalation. When the exhalation is complete, there is also a short pause before the inhalation begins. Note this. These pauses occur so quickly that you might not notice them at first, but with mindfulness you will recognize them. Initially, both inhalation and exhalation may be long. Note that without thinking or saying, long inhalation, long exhalation. When you note the sensation of long breaths, your body becomes quite calm. Then your breath may become shorter. Note how the short breaths feel, again without saying, short breath. Then note the entire process of the breath from beginning to end. Now the breath may have become smooth. The body and mind become more tranquil than before. Note this feeling of tranquility and peace. Although you try to focus on the breath, your mind may wander. You may find yourself recalling places you have been, people you have met, friends you haven't seen in a while, a book you read long ago, or the taste of a meal you had yesterday. As soon as you realize your mind is no longer on the breath, bring it back and anchor it there mindfully. Some people use the method of naming the events happening in their mind while meditating. For example, a meditator might note thinking and say in their mind, thinking, thinking, thinking. When hearing a sound, they might think, hearing, hearing, hearing. I do not recommend this method. The events you want to name may occur too quickly for you to name them. Naming takes time. Time for the thought to arise or the sensation to occur. Time to find the word to describe what you are aware of. You cannot name something while it is happening. You can only name it after it has happened. Just observe them as they occur and note them. That is enough. Mindfulness trains you in direct awareness. It helps you eliminate intermediaries such as words or concepts. Concepts and words appear after awareness to help you express thoughts and feelings. However, in meditation, you do not need to express anything to anyone. You just need to know that seeing is just seeing, hearing is just hearing, touching is just touching, knowing is just knowing. That is enough. 1 minute of mindfulness, When you leave your meditation cushion, make a commitment to dedicate 1 minute every hour to meditation throughout the day. You might wonder what you can achieve in 1 minute. It's not enough time to even find a meditation seat. Don't worry about finding a seat. Stay right where you are, whether you are sitting, standing, or lying down. It doesn't matter. Spend 59 minutes of each hour doing whatever you do during the day. But for 1 minute of each hour, stop whatever you are doing and meditate. You can set your watch or computer to beep every hour as a reminder. When you hear the signal, pause your work, clear your mind of any thoughts, and close your eyes. Focus on your breath. If you don't know how long a minute is, inhale and exhale 15 times, focusing entirely on your breath. If it takes longer than a minute, don't worry about it. You have nothing to lose. When a minute has passed, before you open your eyes, make a commitment to meditate for 1 more minute in the next hour, and so on throughout the day. Look forward to that moment and create a sense of anticipation for it. Ask yourself, when will I get to meditate again? If you maintain this simple method, by the end of the day, you will have added 10 or 15 minutes of meditation. Moreover, by the end of the day, the desire to meditate, strengthened by thinking about it every hour, will inspire you to meditate before going to bed. End the day with about half an hour of sitting meditation. When you go to bed, focus on your breath until you fall asleep. If you wake up in the middle of the night, return your mind to your breath. When you wake up the next morning, with your mind still focused on your breath, remind yourself to start the day with a sitting meditation session.